Yeah, I have a hula hoop. I have a weighted hula hoop.
And for me, that means a Nintendo.
But have you ever played Pass the Pig?
Oh my God, I love Pass the Pig. The Yo-Yo Factory. Like, go to yoyofactory.com.
Shout out to yo-yos and hula hoops. Hey, welcome to the WendiCooper Show. Speaking of age, this is where we have conversations with remarkable people over 50. And I am going to try to stay lighthearted in this intro to this episode because I just think that's what we have to do right now. It is during the lockdown and we are all home and we are all feeling the pinch and we're all scared. So that's enough said about that. My guest today is with Bob Knorpp. He is the Director of Strategic Marketing for the Cool Beans Group. He is also the host of a long-running marketing podcast called the Beancast, where a panel discusses the hot topics of marketing, advertising, and public relations for the week. So you should tune into that at the Beancast. Search for it in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. The same way you just found me. How about that? I am not going to fill the show with any sponsorship jargon whatsoever. And I am certainly at the end of the show not going to remind you to download it, follow me on Facebook, or go to my website, WendiCooper.com. I'm not too sure why anybody does that, because if they're listening to your frickin' podcast, then I think they know where to find you. So anyway, without further ado, let's welcome Bob Knorpp to the show.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Do you remember that you were my very first guest on my very first, show that I ever did?
If I remember correctly, I actually named your very first podcast.
You did. You did. It was LA Talk Radio, so it was actually a live internet radio show, so it was live. And it was so nerve-wracking for me because I had been on it's so funny because I hear other people tell the story of being on the Beancast for the first time. Or even now, sometimes I'll hear people talk about the Beancast, not on the Beancast, but how, how people meet each other through your podcast, and then we all kind of become colleagues and friends and over the years and stuff like that. And it's so funny, Bob, because I don't know if I ever told you this, but the first time I was on your podcast, I studied the notes like crazy. Like
everybody says that, like Saul Colt, when he was on the show for the first time, he had printed out every single one of the preparatory documents and had them all scattered around his entire kitchen table and was reading and studying and was completely nervous. And the first time he was on, I'm like, who is this guy? He's not doing real well. And I give him a second chance, and now he's like one of the best guests I have, the most recurring guests I have. But it's funny how everybody comes into it with so much anxiety and angst, and I'm just doing this out of my closet. I don't think very much about it.
Actually, I've learned over the years that it's really not about you have to be familiar with it because it's topics. It's the week's topics in advertising, marketing, and public relations. And you have awesome, your panel of guests is great. And it's really about, do I want to say it's more of an opinion show?
In fact, I always tell people, I don't want your expertise. I want your opinions. I want you to be a pundit. And I want you to be able to talk broadly about topics, not deeply about topics, because we don't have time to get into the subjects really, really deeply as an expert interview would be. I mean, this is about general opinions and impressions and thoughts about the week's trends and issues and news. It's a lot like Meet the Press. I always call it Meet the Press for the ad industry.
That's so great. So I've been on Meet the Press for the ad industry quite a few times. I love Meet the Press.
So do I.
That's so funny. So anyway, yes, you named my first show. And the reason that I went to you, Bob, was because I was so nervous about doing a live radio show that I wanted you to interview me because you had made me feel so comfortable in being on your podcast. And this is almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. I mean, it's hard for me to get my mind around how long I've been doing this program sometimes. I mean, I'm up to 585 episodes. I've been doing it for going on 12 years, and I put out at least 50 shows a year. It's a lot of work, but I find the most gratifying thing about it probably would be the discipline. I mean, the discipline of having to do the show so often, to constantly be calling the news, to constantly be abreast of the latest trends and issues. It makes me better at my job. It makes me better at what I do for a living. And so it's just that discipline, bringing that into my life was really good, especially going out freelancing as I was when I started this particular program.
What do you think of what's happening in the podcast space now? You know, the growth and now what will happen with people being home but first of all, what do you really feel about, we've both been in it for quite some time, and it's like it's about time, but I have my own feelings about how I feel about its growth.
I have a love-hate relationship with it as well. I mean, I love the fact that the medium is growing and getting a lot more attention, and that people are investing in it, and they're doing great programming. But because of the low bar to entry, there's a lot of shows being produced that shouldn't be produced. I mean, people putting out podcasts and doing 10 episodes and then letting them lag. People putting out podcasts that are complete vanity projects. People putting out bad podcasts with bad audio. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there. It just floods the market with this trash, and it's hard for people who are doing quality programming to rise up, especially if you don't have the marketing budget of, say, iHeartRadio or NPR or WNYC. If you don't have that kind of marketing budget and that name recognition to go behind it, it's hard for people to surface good content anymore. And that's problematic. But I mean, overall, I'm encouraged that the medium is getting a lot of attention and a lot of serious investment. And hopefully, I always talk about intestinal fortitude. I mean, it's just like if you're the last person standing, then you've won the race. And I kind of feel like I've been doing this long enough. I should just keep going. I should keep promoting it and keep pushing for it, because it is a quality program. It is something that is valuable to my audience, and it would be valuable to an even greater audience if more people could find it.
It's everybody and their brother and their dog has got a podcast, Bob. You know what I mean? And it's like it doesn't make it easy for the people that have put a lot of energy and a lot of time into it. And then along comes, like you say, the NPRs and everybody that's jumping in that they're just taking their radio shows that they already do and they're just making them into a downloadable podcast.
Well, not always. I mean, like WNYC does a good job of creating programs specifically for the medium.
Yes,
and I'm really
true.
impressed with that. But the trouble is the economics of it are just ludicrous. I mean, I had ideas, and I was talking to someone who was pretty high up over at WNYC about putting a program on. And he said to me bluntly, he said, "Bob, we're not even going to look at this unless we can get 1 million downloads the first time." I mean, they're looking for 1 million downloads the first episode. And if it can't get that, if they can't reasonably think that they can make that kind of number, they're not even going to take a look at your idea. And for me, that's against the whole premise of what podcasting's true strength is, which is engaging micro audiences.
Right.
But I understand the economics. When you're coming out with a show that's supposed to have national or international support, and it needs to have that in order to economically be feasible, you've got to set those kind of restrictions in place, and it's pretty disheartening.
But more and more companies are doing advertising and sponsoring even smaller podcasts, right? No?
Oh, yeah. I get plenty of sponsors for my program. I mean, I could use more, to be blunt. It would make life a lot easier. But because I'm a business-to-business podcast, and because I engage a very specific audience in the business sector, I can command a higher CPM, which is industry terminology for cost per thousand. I know you know that, but in case people outside don't know that.
Yeah.
And it basically, I get a higher cost per thousand every time I put an ad out, because of the fact that I'm reaching a target market where you can get a customer who's worth $100,000 to you, as opposed to a consumer product that's only getting you a $5 or a $6, Happy Meal or something.
Yeah, sponsorships are one thing. I don't have a sponsor. I guess what is funny is that you could do is I could make up that I have a sponsor. Like I could do a host read of a totally fictitious product and make people think that I've got this sponsor. Sorry, Bob, I just thought of that.
The yo-yo factory, like I did.
Exactly. So anyway.
I just have to stop for just a second and talk about Hans, because Hans van den Elzen, who is the founder of the Yo-Yo Factory, was a ex-world champion yo-yoer, I guess they call him, yo-man. And he put together one of the best yo-yo companies out there. He's the only person in this space, in the skill toy space, truly innovating on the product day in, day out. Fantastic stuff. And in this time of quarantine, it is the perfect thing to take up. So go to yoyofactory.com. I don't know why I'm promoting that, but I figure, what the heck? You talked about coming up with a fake ad read. I'll give it to you right now.
Thank you. That's cool. I think that's awesome. It gives me more marketing spin. Yeah, I have a hula hoop. I have a weighted hula hoop that I bought at Target once a long time ago. And I've been doing that. But it's this gigantic hula hoop because you can take it apart and you can distribute the weights in different areas of the hula hoop, depending on what kind of workout you want. So that's kind of cool to do. But, shout out to yo-yos and hula hoops. Well, what's going to happen now, that everybody, now that we are in the middle of the quarantine, you're in New York City, I'm in Los Angeles. And we were talking a little bit before the show that, for us, and I'm exactly like you are. You mentioned that people might think that you're a bit of an extrovert, when in fact you're more of an introvert. I'm exactly the same way. So I'm very cool.
I was built for quarantine. I mean, this is just a wonderful experience for me in a lot of ways. I mean, it's kind of nerve-wracking to go outside in New York. I mean, everything's so quiet. The air is fresh, and I've never had such great lungfuls of air on 42nd Street. But it's kind of scary outside to be out there right now. But inside my apartment, I feel completely comfortable. I mean, I've got everything I need. I've got access to food. I've got access to people through electronic means. And Whitney's in the apartment, and we're doing fine together. We're both introverts. It's really a great experience. I know a lot of people who are extroverts who are just climbing the walls in this experience.
I think for me, I was trying to explain it to my husband. I live in El Segundo, and so we have a very beautiful neighborhood that we can walk around in. We can walk down to the beach in 20 minutes, but it's lots of hills and trees and stuff like that. A lot of people are always out walking. But I was telling him that I felt as though and this might sound very odd to say, but I felt as though I'm kind of like on an even place with everyone else. I don't feel this weird gnawing pressure to find a new gig or to get this done or that done. I feel a little more at peace with where I am in my life. And I just feel like I'm not competing with a whole bunch of people. We're all in the same boat. And that's an odd thing to have to try to describe the peace that kind of gives me. I don't know. I can't explain.
Oh, no, I totally track with what you're saying. There is a certain amount of odd peace that comes from the fact that everybody else is in the same boat, whether or not they're further ahead in their career or not. They're all stuck at home. They're all dealing with this. And I that does bring a certain level of equality to the entire playing field.
Yeah. It makes me. I hope that other people can feel that feeling also. I had a bad last year, so I'm feeling pretty at peace. But anyway, Bob, how old are you?
I am 52.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So you're a young. I turned 65 on March 20th. So that was
you don't look.
Well, thank you, Bob. That's exactly what you're supposed to say, right? But
so there you go. No, I actually met you last year. Or was it 2 years ago?
I think it was 2 years ago. If it was not even 3 years ago, it was at the LA Book Festival. My neck really hurt after that because I had to look up and talk to you.
I am 6'5" for those of you out there.
My goodness, we were walking and talking, and I think I said to you, "Oh gosh, I think my neck started to hurt." But anyway, you are very tall, and it was you were debating your 500th episode, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the 500 episode at that point. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Did I
So that
just
would
say
have been about a year and a
500?
half ago.
Did I just say
You did
500?
say 500. I rolled right past it.
Oh my goodness. Yes, you're 500th. I'm so embarrassed for myself right now. Okay, there's a lot of ageism in our world. There's a lot of ageism in the industry that we come from, which is marketing and advertising, especially on the agency side of things. I find that a lot of people that I speak to, that once they turn 50, 51, 52, 53, they have a different emotional connection to their age. But it's moving into the second half of life. But it's also because we have so much ageism in our world, and I'm anxious to see how, the quarantine and the virus and all this stuff, it's going to change so many things. So it's interesting to even talk about anything because we don't really know what's going to happen now. But ageism is a big factor, especially in the advertising space. It seems where you start to turn 50 years old, people start looking at you differently. And you kind of, people lose their jobs anyway, and that's a big thing in the agency world, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just like if you can get the same job done by a 20 or 30-year-old that you can get done by a 50-year-old who is making twice or three times or sometimes four times the salary, you're going to fire the older person if you can get away with it. And there's a lot of tactics that are employed by employers to make people obsolete. It's not straight up ageism in the sense like you're 50, we've got to get rid of you. It's more subtle. It's more about, it's just like, well, your job description has changed and you're not able to keep up with it. So we're going to have to let you go, that type of thing. And it helps. I mean, the companies are already stretched. We're talking specifically the agencies, but the marketing world is starting to catch on to this as well. But in the agency realm, I mean, it's so stretched thin. You've got the public companies that are trying to make money, trying to please investors, and you have on the other side the clients who are pushing for cheaper, longer payment terms, etc. I mean, there's no way to manage an office, manage an agency without thinking about that top layer of management that you have right now and how old are they and how much money are they making and can we get this done more effectively and more, for less money. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses for it. Because quite frankly, it's like in a lot of ways, I'm a victim of it. I mean, there's no agency in the world. I've said this for 10 years. There's no way I could go back to the agency world. And it's not from a decision standpoint on my part. It's from the standpoint of as soon as they see your age, they don't want to even begin to talk to you because they know your salary expectations are going to be at a level that is not supported by their business model. And there's also the kind of bias that young creatives come up with the best ideas. And
I don't expect the older I get that people are going to continue to pay me the big salary or the big, retainers that I used to get. I don't think that way. I don't.
No, I agree. I think that, when you say your expectations are not at that level, people don't believe you because it's just like they think that, okay, you're going to be there now, but you're not going to be happy down the line. I mean, there's a whole calculus going in there, not to mention that it's tremendous. There's a lot of pressure on a hiring manager to hire someone younger than themselves. I mean, I think it's an implied bias that when you're trying to hire in or trying to work with a freelancer or hiring someone, to have someone much older than yourself when you're the person who's supposed to be in charge can work on the psyche of a lot of small-minded people, to be quite honest. Or inexperienced individuals. And that leads to a certain amount of bias. In some ways I could get really angry about it and get upset, and I think a lot of people do take that route, but I'm more in a state of acceptance at this point in my career. I've looked at other opportunities to expand my usefulness, if you will, in the marketplace. I create and executive produce and host a lot of podcasts for brands around the country. I take organizations' ideas or promotional opportunities and I turn them into complete programs. And that's become something that I can truly own, because not a lot of people are very good at coming up with good podcast content. I'm particularly good at it. I bring a certain level of expertise, and people love working with me. And the best part is they don't ever see me, because for the most part, I'm always working behind the scenes. We do everything digitally. So, I mean, that's one way that I've expanded. And the other way was playwriting.
Right.
I mean, it was just, it's kind of a moonshot in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of playwrights and a lot of competition.
But number one, I love your plays. I love them. I'm halfway through Station Break.
Station Break takes place in North Carolina. It's in a small radio station. And it's an allegory in a lot of ways. It's an allegory about the way that we treat each other through our political conversations and the monetization of political conversations. And it's really just a thinly veiled allegory about social media, even though it takes place in the old school format of radio.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the first one, The Art of Buying, that I read, I really love that. I want to do that in like a radio story, like all the different characters. I think it's just awesome. My creative brain and I juice when I'm reading your stuff, Bob, because you're such a great writer. It's like I'm just seeing the picture. I'm hearing the voices. I'm seeing it all happening. It's just terrific. So let's set it up for our listeners, okay? And we have to set it up a little bit because it takes place in an ad agency. Most of it takes place in one room, which is the idea think tank, or this something funny name, with lots of beanbag pillows.
I called it an idea ignition room. What I love about that first play, the thing that got me so juiced about it and got me so excited about it, was this idea that there's a difference between equality and power. And that, I was trying to challenge accepted notions of feminism, because a woke culture would say we all should be equal and everybody should treat each other nicely. But those two are not the same thing. If you want to be truly treated equal within business, sometimes your hands get dirty, and sometimes you do nasty things, and sometimes you have to step on people to get ahead, and you have to have a certain attitude. And it doesn't make, I think there's this perception that if you see a woman acting rough and tumble in that kind of setting, you go right to the B word in describing her. And I challenge people to read that play all the time. I always come back to, it's just like, why do you think she's the bad guy? Well, I would say that every character in that play has some kind of damning flaw,
right?
And it's just like, and when you look at it from a 10,000-foot view, everybody gets what's coming to them. And it's kind of a twisted sense of ethics going on within that environment, And there's a lot of archetypal types of characterizations, but that's about as far as I would go. If anybody wants to read it, just get in touch with me. I would love to have you read it.
From the business side of it, how does that work? Where do you go now?
Well, people tell me it's sometimes a 7 or 8 year journey of trying to get the play read, trying to get it to a table read, then move it on to some kind of staged read where you're basically have actors on a stage sitting in seats and someone describing the action, and they read it in front of an audience. Yeah, it's a matter of rewriting and getting it to a perfect place, and then hopefully getting to a producer who's willing to put it on a commercial theater somewhere.
Could you do a sizzle piece? Like, would it be could in today's world of everyone listens to things, in our audio world, could you do like a sizzle piece where you take like a section of it and you do the different characters, but it's an audio sizzle that you would send out to places as opposed to sending the actual script?
That would be something that I've never heard done, but it sounds like an interesting opportunity. I mean, what it really comes down to is just getting it heard and finding someone who falls in love with it, who has money and is willing to take it under their wing. I mean, theater industry is a little bit more Wild West in some respects than the movie industry, because the movie industry is so consolidated at the studios. It's just like the theater industry has a bunch of patrons from different sources, and you have varying degrees of professional producers out there. There's people who are producing lots of great programs and lots of great shows, and doing Broadway, etc. But then you have like some rich person who happens to be a patron of the arts who wants to be a producer who's doing some work with small plays, trying to get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's lots of different avenues to take. I mean, I'm speaking in some ways out my butt, because
Could you self-produce it? I mean, like, could you say 2 nights only, and then you kind of get people together? Well, I know it's easier said than done. Well, maybe in New York it's even easier, right? Because you have a lot of actors, theater actors. Oh, it is.
So
you couldn't get a bunch of friends together just to like self-produce not friends, but like up and coming actors that want to be seen and would love to be in.
Oh yeah, there's
play.
Ways to do things like that. I mean, it's just like, and there's lots of opportunities. The trouble with theater, though, as opposed to the film industry, is in the film industry you can make a film and you can distribute it via lots of different methods.
Yeah.
Whereas you have a finite number of theaters in the community here in New York, and that finite number, even when you're going off Broadway, that finite number is an oppressive factor because so many people want to get their shows produced. And, it's a tough bottleneck. I mean, in some ways, I thought, I like the medium of theater. I like writing for it. I mean, a lot of people like to put lots of scenes into the theater pieces in different locations and different venues. Because they're essentially writing for the TV or they're writing for movies. I mean, they're thinking about things in a very film-like way. Whereas when I write, I think specifically about the theater and about that venue and about the restrictions. And that's one of the reasons why in both these first 2 plays that I wrote, they're both taking place in one scene, because that's the way I think theater reaches to its true roots. I mean, it gets into this thing where it's not about the setting, it's about what's happening in the setting, and it's about the conversations that go on there. I find that restriction of space to be probably the most freeing thing for me as a writer, because it helps me to focus more on the dialogue going on in the room than trying to set up the new setting every time you enter into a new space.
Yeah, I kind of liken that too. Like if somebody was to come to me and say, okay, I want you to produce write a commercial and produce the commercial, I would say, my first thought is, what's your budget? And even if the budget was only $10,000, let's just say it was $10,000, because that did happen, then you think backwards, right? You work that backwards. Okay, it's like your room. It's like what you're doing with I only want it to be, in this single space. And I did take notice of that, Bob, and I really like that about how you did that. I just real quickly.
That comes from my direct marketing roots, actually, because in direct marketing, you're forced to work within the very strict structures of what you're given. If you're given an envelope, this has got to be in a 6x9 envelope. So get creative with it.
That's right. Here's a quarter and go to the store and bring back a filet mignon. Okay, I'll be right back.
Exactly. And it's just like, but it forced me to be more creative in every instance. And I think that I'm particularly well suited for writing for the stage because of that.
I do too. So I am assuming it is okay for me to share. Is it okay for me to share these with some actors that do lots of plays here in LA that I know?
Yes, I would love more people to read it.
All right. So, Bob, what is coming up? What's going on? Anything exciting that you're going to do this afternoon? Now that we're just sitting at home.
Me and my brand new Nintendo Switch are probably going to have some fun playing Mario Kart, but that's about it.
What's interesting is that as I'm listening to you talk, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking around my office and I'm thinking, what is it why am I struggling to really find something? I'm struggling in my side of the discussion today, because I'm thinking nothing is the same outside in our world. Nothing. What can we talk about that is what's coming up? What do we say? Blah, blah. I can't, because I feel as though everything is going to be so different for everyone. when we get through this, you know?
The idea of making long-range plans, like it's come down for me, the thing that's most on my mind is our Saturday brunch that we always go to every single week. We can't go to it now. And for me, the most freeing, wonderful thing I could say to you would be, we're going to be at brunch on Saturday, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I can't even say that. So, you just got to look inside your particular space where you're at right now and find the thing that's most interesting for you there and make the most of that. And for me, that means a Nintendo.
Yeah, there you go. When you said Nintendo, I thought, oh my God, I think I have like in the garage somewhere. Totally forgot. I think I have, what's the one where it's not in the Nintendo, but it's the, where you get to play like tennis and bowling and all that stuff.
Oh, the Wii. You have a Wii.
Yeah. I have a Wii. As far as I remember, I have a Wii. That could be fun. But have you ever played Pass the Pig?
Oh my God, I love Pass the Pig. I used to take that to amusement parks and play it in line when I was waiting long lines to go on a roller coaster or something.
Yes. So I got introduced to Pass the Pig from my brother, and then my brother came to visit with his wife, and we had a Pass the Pig tournament. And then this Christmas, I bought like the ultimate Pass the Pig kit, where it's all different colors of you get like 6 die, right? So you get 6, 2, 4, 6. Yeah. So if anybody needs to kill some time, you can probably order it somewhere. I don't know if it'll be delivered in the next 3 weeks, but it's called Pass the Pig, and it is so much fun. Anybody can play. So that's a good one. That's a good one. That's something to do.
The game that became my barroom favorite, Whitney and I would take it to a bar for happy hour and we'd play it, was Bananagrams. Bananagrams is the best game ever. It's basically a racing Scrabble game without a board, and you're basically racing to finish all the letters in the banana. I guess it's in a banana sack.
Well, Bob, this has just been super terrific. I mean, I always seem to go a little bit longer than I think I'm going to, but I think that's a good sign. So I do want you to be able to let everybody know how to contact you, the Beancast and all of that good stuff. So do your shameless plug, as you would say.
Well, the best way to get in touch with me is thebeancast.com, and that's where you can find more information about the show. You can find out how to advertise on the program. You can find out more about my consultancy. You can find out more about what kinds of work I do, and it's probably the one place you need to go to find everything. You can also find the Beancast on any podcatcher, so that's Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you are, Google Play. Anywhere you go, you can find it. So just check it all out at thebeancast.com.
So I do recommend everybody listens to the Beancast. Plus, your guests are awesome. You have guests that are Tom Webster, Tamsin Webster, Mitch Joel. These are regular guests on your show, and they are very, very, very well-known people in advertising and marketing space, and in other sectors or verticals of marketing also. So it's really worth a listen.
Well, thank you very much. I think that it is. I think that it's good for people in the business and out of the business. I have a lot of people listening to the show who aren't even in advertising just because the show is entertaining first. And quite frankly, that's my secret for developing podcasts, any podcast. You look for the entertainment value, and then you shove in the news. You don't start with the informational portion of your show. You look at what's the entertainment value, because that's why people tune into podcasts. They essentially want to be entertained.
That's right. They want to be entertained, and they don't want the same boring stuff, and they don't want bad audio. So let's just leave it at that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Bob, I give my love and hugs to Whitney, who I've never, ever met, but I'm sure she is just wonderfully adorable and tall.
Oh, and she is tall.
And you stay safe and stay well. Okay, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Really like this music. We're working on something, and this is a piece of music that I kind of really like it. I can't tell you what it's for, But anyway, I think I'll close the show with it. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you will listen to another episode. There's probably 28 more that you can listen to right now if you're home or walking or you just need something different to listen to. Stay safe, stay healthy, and above all, try to stay home. Thanks for listening. This episode was produced by C-Spot Run Productions. Music and original scores and mix by Orsi Digital Post. Check them out at orsidigitalpost.com.